Thank you for joining us. My name is Margarita Noyes, and I'm here today with Professor Olavo de Carvalho. And he and I have a connection. His son is married to my daughter. And we have almost 5 grandchildren.
Thank you for joining us
in common. And I have known Professor Olavo for more than 10 years. And he was very kind to me many years ago when my husband and I separated and I had no money and no way to support my children. And he allowed me to teach English on his network. And he had interesting ideas about how to learn English. His idea was, anyone can learn English, they have to just begin to read an interesting book. And if they have a dictionary and a grammar, they can learn English just by reading the book. But even better, if you have a human being to explain the difficult part of the language which is not in the dictionary, not in the grammar book. So he and I did some reading in difficult books, and we tried his method, and it was very good. And so that became the basis for our method of teaching English for philosophy students. And so right now, we are re-releasing the content that was produced years ago in English for philosophy students and in other courses that I taught through my website, Lessons Online. And we are also beginning to produce new content for advanced English students in Brazil using the same method of reading an interesting book and talking about it in English. So today we are here to discuss the effect of literature on politics. And my first question to Professor Olavo, I want to read you a quote that you are familiar with by Hugo von Hofmannsthal. He says, "Nothing becomes reality in the life of a nation that was not already present in the literature of the nation." So my question is, where does this conservative movement in Brazil come from? Was there a literature embodying conservative values in Brazil to form a foundation for this?
Well, this movement came practically only from my books. There is no tradition of conservative literature in Brazil. I started in the 90s.
1990s.
And it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know why. Because I believe I was the most understood writer in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody understood what I was saying. Millions of readers and followers, and they felt I was telling the truth. The truth was very obvious, very manifest. Everybody could see it, but nobody had the language to held it
Yes.
because the Portuguese language was very poor at that time. Poor because of two factors. First, every science and technique has its established vocabulary, where every word has its fixed meaning. It's a fixed and repetitive. But in real life, things are not this way. We don't have fixed meanings we can use in personal conversation or in literature. In literature, as in life, the meaning of the words has to be grasped in the very moment of the experience. We don't have a fixed, we don't have a ready language to express. So we have to improvise expression. And this is the real meaning of literature. Teach people to create their language according to the situation they are living in the very moment. This was what I did in Brazil about the political situation. Create a language, improvise a language, to tell things that everybody was feeling, everybody would see, but they had no language to express. And it was a very difficult operation because I had to use at the same time the classical Portuguese language and the popular language of the moment. Mix the things. One American reader once said my language was baroque because it mixed different things, different and incompatible things. He was right. So it's fantastic that the foreign reader could grasp this when even many Brazilians cannot grasp it. So this is the literature is to create new possibilities. These possibilities can have to be created first in imagination and then in reality. What you cannot imagine, you cannot do. So when you open new linguistic possibilities, you are creating new possibilities of action. So you are setting people free from the limitations of the real world at that moment. This is what I did in Brazil. I did what
When I was in training to be a teacher of English as the second language, they taught me that English is a very flexible language, that you can recombine words to make new meanings very easily. Is Portuguese that way?
I believe so. Portuguese is very flexible. And Portuguese is very difficult to translate. Because the popular language is very weak. Brazilians create more jokes than any other people.
Yeah. And yet jokes are the hardest thing to translate.
Yes.
Yeah, for second language students, it's impossible. It's so difficult. When I read that quote of Hugo Hofmannsthal, I was thinking it meant fiction. So in the imagination, with stories, people get ideas that they then can put into their actual material world. Were you able to bring an appetite for excellent fiction to the Brazilians when you were beginning in the 1990s?
Well, we still have this problem because the literature fiction in Brazil it's practically dead for 3 or 4 decades. The novels and short stories don't follow the complexity of reality. Brazilian society changed a lot in the last decades, and literature did not reflect it. So we have a gap. Reality is more complex than our imagination. I believe this is the most serious problem in Brazil.
Do you have any idea what caused that lapse between literature not reflecting reality?
Yes. First of all, it was the fact that the universities, they dominated the whole field of intellectual activity. And universities tend to be bureaucratic organizations. And they cannot follow the complexities of real life. And in second place, the same universities were instruments for the ideological domination of one of the leftist parties. So everybody was forced to use the same language to say always the same things. They want everybody to agree with them, to see things as they saw them, and express them in the same language they use. And this was a disaster.
You know, I see a trend in the United States of the political left changing language. They first they broaden the meaning of words to include many things, and then they require that you use this broad general word instead of specific words.
Yes, yes. An English writer defined literature as the war against the cliché. And the university language is cliché. There's a lot of clichés, both in scientific language and in political ideology language. So you always have to use the same clichés, the same, how we say, topoi. I don't know how to translate topoi, the Greek word topoi, topos. How could I say that in English? I don't know.
Do you know how to say that word in English?
Like slogans.
Slogans.
Like not properly slogans, but repetitive terms that people are used, that make people feel they belong to a group.
Right.
A kind of group identity.
Right.
When group identity is more important than reality, people cannot think anymore.
Yeah. What was the literature like in Brazil before these 40 or 50 years ago?
If you read Brazilian literature until the 60s or 70s, you have a very clear picture of Brazilian life and Brazilian society. Not anymore. Everything changed in Brazilian society, and this is not documented in literature. I'll give an example. Now we have 70,000 murders a year. So Brazilian life became very insecure. You have not a clear picture of this in the Brazilian literature. Only you have in the Brazilian movies, have two movies that tell something about this. This was the Elite Squad and Central do Brasil. Como poderia? Central do Brasil is the name of.
I'm not sure. Central Brazil?
Central Brazil.
Yeah. You see something of this insecure life in Brazil. But in general, the activity of theater and writers in Brazil only repeat the established language of political movements.
Right.
And especially of foreign NGOs. About human rights and defense of minorities and all these things, and feminism and abortion and gay movement. So you have to speak like these people because they want to feel they belong to a group.
Right. I noticed in the United States, in like Netflix, the series, we will have very imaginative, interesting television series for approximately one season, and you're hooked. You're like, this is great, I'm interested. And then maybe in the second season, it all goes to what we call social justice
Yes,
warriors.
yes. It starts very good, very interesting, and then suddenly it becomes propaganda.
And
Become
then
propaganda.
it's not interesting anymore, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
stop watching
I
it.
have been not watching it because you have in American movies, the richness of language is fabulous. Huh? People are very. They speak like genius of literature. Everybody, it's fantastic. But we have also this problem that from the last 2 or 3 decades, everything becomes propaganda.
Right. And I get the impression that Hollywood is always surprised when a movie which is not politically correct is successful, because they think that the population likes their politics, I guess.
Yes, they only understand virtue as their own virtue. There are no other virtues. Huh?
Right.
They believe they are the only representatives of good on earth. So they cannot understand other forms of good.
Right. When I was raising my children, I discovered through study that there had been a sea change in juvenile literature in the 1960s. It's documented in the critical literature of children's literature, that which was written about it. And the change was, previous to the 1960s, they were trying to give children a moral example that would be in the attractive hero of the story, and also to reflect that bad choices often lead to bad consequences. But in the 1960s, they began to see this as disgusting, disgustingly sweet, saccharine, this kind of thing. They said what we need is to give children a relatable hero which would be like themselves. And that meant a child who was bad, a child who speaks disrespectfully, a child who believes their parents are stupid and their siblings are annoying. And so the literature completely changed, so that I did not actually allow my children to read literature for children that was post 1960. I read stories to them that were from the earlier days. And those stories contained the values of conservatism, because those were the values that were in America before the 1960s. And I'm wondering if there is any literature in Brazil that embodies conservative values today that would be in Portuguese.
Well, it's very difficult to speak of conservative values today because of the sexual revolution.
Right.
The sexual revolution associated every value to sexual pleasure. And you know, the human capacity to stand sexual frustration is very small. So all these people are always irritated, always angry because they feel sexually frustrated. The more sexual pleasure you want, the more sexual frustration you will have. This is the nature of things. So all these people are always revolted with the state of things in the world because they cannot reach the level of sexual pleasure they want.
So, in your personal opinion, for the record, do you think the best sexual pleasure is to be had within a single man and wife for a lifetime?
I don't know. I don't know. I only know that you cannot build your life on the basis of sexual pleasure. Sexual pleasure is always limited.
So it's just
Always,
because
always,
it's
always
always
limited. If you have a couple, man and wife, and if you have collective sex,
Like with other couples.
the level of sexual pleasure is limited in both cases. Sexual pleasure is limitation. But this is the reason it cannot ever be set as the main value.
So you think there have
Sexual
to
pleasure
be
is
other
something
values?
is something that only happens. It's not a value.
Right.
Huh? It's just something that happens sometimes. It's not a right. There is no
Yes,
right to
there's
sexual
no
pleasure.
right to it,
huh?
right. Yeah.
Because pleasure, St. Thomas Aquinas explained it, pleasure is the result of some action.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot guarantee it as a right because you cannot foresee and establish the result beforehand.
Right, right.
It can happen, sometimes it happens, sometimes doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the good life, theoretically, you would say that sexual pleasure is not mandatory for the good life.
It's not mandatory, and it cannot never be the center of life.
Right. It's one option for one good thing, one good in the good life of many, many, and not even a central one.
Of course, all you can decide is what we will do. We cannot establish the result beforehand. And a life based on pleasure is a life based in this expectation of a certain result.
Right.
And when it fails, you get angry.
Right.
So this is crazy. This is childish.
Right. So I wanted, before we spoke today, I made some notes and prepared, and I was thinking, what are the values of conservatism? And I'm interested in maybe making a short list. What do you think are some of the values that the conservative movement brings to society?
Well, I never speak in the name of conservative movement or any movement. I speak only in the name of myself. So I'm not a movement. I'm not an ideology. I'm just a guy who sees things and try to explain them the best I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that life cannot be based on the expectation of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between a heterosexual and a homosexual? Only the preference for certain kinds of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Does this have real importance?
No.
I cannot believe. Eh?
Right.
When you study the great characters in history, some of them are heterosexual, others are homosexual, and this made no difference.
Right.
So people say that Leonardo da Vinci was homosexual. Huh? Well, look to the works of Leonardo da Vinci and show me where is the homosexuality there. There's no homosexual sign there. Nothing.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right. What is your opinion about what?
But now,
Mhm.
in the last decades, homosexual became an identity.
Right.
There is no homosexual identity because nobody can be homosexual 24 hours a day.
Right.
He can be only homosexual when he's playing sex.
Right. Right. Yes.
Understand?
Yes. Yes.
But if they transform this in identity, the guy has to think of sex 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So all of them became crazy.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah.
I don't believe that there are people that are homosexual. Some ones practice homosexuality sometimes, but not 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. So you don't believe there are some people who are homosexual? You do or you don't? I didn't understand what you said.
Listen, if your sexual identity is based in the form of your body,
Right.
I am a man, I have a masculine identity, you are a woman, you have a feminine identity, we don't have to think about it because it is too obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a problem. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to think, I am a man, I am a man, I am a man.
Mm-hmm.
If I do this, I'm crazy.
Right.
But if your sexual your supposed sexual identity is based on something that is different of the form of your body, you have to reinforce it all the time by your thought.
Right,
You have to think of it and reaffirm it again and again and again and again.
right,
So you are crazy.
right, right.
You see, in Brazil we have some representatives in the parliament.
Mm-hmm.
They represent the homosexual community.
Hmm.
But I cannot see any difference between them and the other representatives. They are the same thing.
Right,
I only know they are homosexual because they tell it.
right,
I never saw any of them practicing sex. If the guy never had homosexual relations, and he says he had, I only know him by what he says.
Hmm.
So it's a kind of verbal identity
right,
created and reinforced again and again and again and again. So these people tend to escape from reality.
right.
And I don't believe this question, these matters of sex are real problems.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm? Because
what-
it's totally subjective. Huh?
yeah,
We have sexual attraction for things that we imagine,
right,
and we imagine them before we do them. Huh?
right.
So who can control this?
We do.
Hmm? Nobody can control
Nobody.
it. Nobody. If you start imagining some things, we will want to do them.
Ah, yes,
Yes?
yes.
Eh? And the immense variety of forms of sexual pleasure, this is so big, so varied that this cannot ever be an identity.
Right,
For example, the guy says, I have attraction for men. Ask him for how many men at a time? One or two? Two or three? This is different.
mm-hmm.
So you have attraction for collective sex with men. This is different from mere homosexuality.
Right,
So all this is fantasy.
right,
And if a guy starts to cultivate the fantasy, it will become a need, a necessity. He will need it again and again and again and again. But this is all subjective. Everything this is subjective.
Do you have
So it can never be an identity.
right? Do you have any ideas about what ought to be legal and what ought not to be legal in the sexual realm?
I believe everything should be legal except murder and aggression.
So you're very libertarian.
Of course, of course, of course.
Do you think?
But this does not mean that I approve it morally.
Uh-huh.
Because morality is one thing and law is another thing.
So what is the distinction in your mind about what should be law and what is just moral?
For example, you say the homosexual marriage. Do you really believe that people want marriage?
Some of them say they do.
Well, maybe they want to go together to collective sex.
Well, I have a
There's a
friend.
homosexual couple, they go together to the sauna.
My friend from college, female, she is a lesbian in a marriage to another woman, and they have 2 children, and they've been together 25 years.
This can happen, of course, this can happen.
Yeah.
But this is not the general rule.
So, in your way of thinking, how should the government decide what a law should be? What should be illegal? It's not just because it's immoral. What would be the reason to make something illegal?
I really don't know.
Don't know that. Yeah.
I don't believe I'm qualified to
So that's
say
outside.
something about
That is a
it.
big question for me because everybody
Because
says
nowadays everybody wants to create laws.
right. Yeah, too many laws.
Too many laws.
A lot
And-
too many.
And everybody's a legislator
Right.
and believes he knows what the state should permit or forbid. I don't know.
So do you have any opinion on, in America right now, there is a big movement to overturn Roe versus Wade. This is the
Well,
first
this
time.
so overturned because it was fraud.
Okay, so it was a bad decision.
This is a bad decision because it's based on a fraud.
What do you mean?
The main witness confessed she lied. So this is not a serious law. This is a fraud. It has to be revoked, of course.
Just because the first witness was...
And by the way, abortion is not a matter of sexual pleasure. Abortion is murder.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Abortion is...
Because I once explained this. If you don't know if the fetus is a human being or a thing, well, you cannot prove one thing, you cannot prove the other. So there is a discussion, and each side has 50% of the chances to be right. So abortion has 50% of chances to be a murder.
Right. So don't do it.
So of course, don't do it.
Obviously. There's 50% chance that someone is in the house.
No,
Don't burn it down.
You shoot a revolver.
Right.
In a direction, there is 50% of chance that there is somebody
In the way.
walking that direction. Would you do it?
No.
Should you have the right to do it? Of
No.
course not.
No. Right.
You cannot play with human lives as it was a game.
Right.
So abortion, I was 100% opposed because it's a murder.
Right.
And there is no way to prove it's not a murder.
Right.
You have no way to either to prove it is a murder. We don't know.
It depends on your definition of murder and your definition of person.
The thing is very complicated. But we don't know. We are not sure. So we don't have a right to do it
Right.
because it's too risky. Do you know the story of the guy who was a medical doctor? He made hundreds of abortions, and then suddenly he noticed, wow, it was a murder.
And now he is a mass murderer.
Yes.
Right.
He discovered he was a mass murderer without knowing it.
Right.
Would you risk to do this? Never.
Yeah, it's terrible. Okay, so how do you see literature affecting politics?
Well, I see by my own writings.
Yeah.
You know, I don't try to influence government or to influence the parliament. Never. But I inspire the people. I made them see what is happening and what they can do.
So you simply connect them back to reality.
Yes,
And then they get the idea, oh my goodness, we need to elect Bolsonaro. Is this the idea?
well, they chose Bolsonaro because there was no other guy.
What was good about Bolsonaro? What is
He was
different?
a sincere and honest man.
Uh-huh.
What are Bolsonaro's political ideas? I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe he has known. But he's an honest guy in a land full of swindlers and thieves and murderers.
I
So
see.
people trusted him, and he is faithful to his promise. He's a very honest guy.
That's
Simple,
good.
simple man, very honest. And this makes a huge difference in Brazil. Because in Brazil, the corruption went beyond human imagination. And if you see all the politicians in Brazil, all of them are liars and thieves and swindlers, all of them.
Is Bolsonaro draining the swamp? Is he getting rid of the corrupt politicians?
He is doing his best, but it's very difficult.
Yes.
You see, the same people that were elected with his support, now they're against him.
Why? Why do you suppose that is?
Because they need money. Very simple, huh?
So they're being bribed by interests?
They want to have the right to be bribed.
I see.
This is sounds very natural in Brazil.
Right.
People start to become scandalized with corruption very recently. They were used. The politicians are swindlers, and this is natural. But in Brazil, they create a debit of uh, 4 trillion reais. This is $2 trillion. This is too much. Huh?
Right.
So the problem is not that they rob it too much.
They got too greedy.
Yes, exactly. They became crazy because they were communists and they want to feed all the communist movements in the world. They want to finance Cuba, to finance Angola, to finance Venezuela, to finance China. That's crazy. Do you know do you know what is the São Paulo Forum? It's the organization,
Yes.
communist organization founded in 1990.
Right.
And when this organization was 15 years old, the FARC, you know, the Colombian guerrilla, sent a letter to the president of the forum, Lula, president of Brazil, thanking him for having saved the communist movement in America. He did
In
not,
America?
in Latin America.
In Latin
Yeah,
America.
He not only saved it, he saved it and fed this movement money. It's a huge amount of money. eh? So Brazilians had to starve in order to give money to Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro. This is absurd. Brazil has 200 million inhabitants. And they were very, most of them very poor. Why should Brazilian poor people work to give money to these people? Why? This is the problem of group identity, group solidarity. I'm solidarity with my group and love these people and I don't care for the others. You know, Lula was never the president of Brazil. He was president of communist Brazilians. He was not good. He was not bad for communists. I believe that leftist critics of Lula was very unjust. They should create a statue for him because he was the best communist leader in Latin American history. Fidel Castro is insignificant compared to Lula. And Che Guevara, even worse. But Lula really saved communism in Latin America, saved it and fed it.
Too bad.
Too bad, too bad.
Now, your writing, starting in the 1990s, was it sort of similar maybe to Thomas Sowell? Sort of essays and newspapers about things people could understand? What were you writing back
No,
then?
because Thomas Sowell and many others, they defend conservative ideals. I don't do it. I only write two kinds of, in matter of politics, I only create two kinds of writings. Writings about method of political science and writings about some specific facts and situations, analysis of specific facts or situations, based, of course, on this method. This is all I do.
And then your readers took it further and further and created a change in the country.
They took their own conclusions.
And what you
I
did
never
was,
said that they should vote Bolsonaro. I said I will vote Bolsonaro.
will
You
vote,
vote
right.
whatever you want.
yeah. And so what you did was set people free from the mind control of the left.
From the language of clichés. That was the only language we had in the beginning of the 90s.
Wow.
And
Zowie.
And when people discovered they had the capacity to express what they saw, they felt it like a miracle.
Right.
They didn't. Many people discovered they were intelligent because they were educated to feel they were stupid and they have to always obey their schools, their universities, and the political parties, and so on. And suddenly they notice they are intelligent. They can feel the situation. They can grasp the reality and express it. This is what I taught them, and this worked.
Yeah.
There are
So-
many talents are certain. I have many of my students are very intelligent people, very gifted writers, and so on.
So then they rose up.
When people say, "Oh, do you want to create a conservative movement?" I just no. I want to create an industry of genius.
Mm-hmm.
Create many genius. This is my ambition.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I'm not a political guru. I'm an educator.
Very interesting.
And of course, you have more intelligent people uh, appearing in my courses than in all universities, all Brazilian universities together.
Do you see yourself and your followers sort of replacing the university system that's so corrupt there, or are they fighting you, or what's the situation between?
Of course, the university institutions, they are fighting me. Because
name?
most of them, yes, most of them are composed of semi-illiterate people. I'm not exaggerating. This is reality.
Right.
Most, when you read university thesis and political sciences, sociology, in the first lines you saw a lot of grammar mistakes.
Right.
They don't know Portuguese language.
Right.
They don't understand what they are saying.
Right.
This is general rule in Brazil.
Right.
Because universities in Brazil are dedicated to sexual pleasure.
Right.
You have courses on masturbation because masturbation is very difficult. You have to study in the university. You cannot learn it yourself. When I was a boy, every boy learned this because the other boy told.
Right.
But now you have to get a PhD. Otherwise, you cannot masturbate. It's very difficult.
So what do they say about you? How do they attack you? Do they call you a racist and a bigot? and a
This is the Bolsonaro guru, the guru of the government. I don't know because I never give up an opinion about anything to the government. Never. And they believe I am the guru of the government. They believe I have an international political organization
Uh-huh.
created to influence the course of things in Brazil. They're the crazy. Yeah?
Uh-huh.
They're crazy because these people never reach mature age. They're never adult. Because the university in Brazil are made to keep people childish forever.
So is there an alternative for educating the children in Brazil for your students' children?
I don't know. I only know about my students. People say, what's your proposal for Brazilian education? I have no proposal for Brazilian education. I have a proposal for the education of my students.
Right. They have to figure out for themselves how to
Of
educate
course,
their
of
children.
course, of course.
How's
This
homeschooling
problem
there?
of Brazilian education is too big.
Yeah, it's
No,
huge.
no single brain can dominate this problem. We
Right.
need many people.
Yeah,
Many
we have
people in
this,
many generations.
we have this problem in America too. Is homeschooling becoming more legal in Brazil?
Little by little.
That's good.
I believe for some people, homeschooling is good. For me, it's not good because I have no talent to educate children. I only educate adult people.
Right. Yeah.
So if I were to teach my children at home, they would learn nothing.
I think you would be surprised.
I don't know.
Children can do so much more than people think at such a younger age. It is incredible.
I give special attention to the moral education of my children.
Right.
To teach them to be good people, to be
Right.
honest,
Yes.
to be friendly,
Yes.
to be Christian.
Yes.
This I taught, but I
Yes.
cannot teach them geography or mathematics.
Right.
I have no patience for that.
Right. I had a funny experience when I was educating my children at home. I had a daughter who was in the 3rd grade, and I went away to the grocery store, leaving her at home with her father. When I came back from the grocery store, my daughter was standing in front of the house, just standing there. And I said to her, "Come, help me carry the groceries." And she said, I cannot leave this spot, just this square on the pavement. And I said, why not? Daddy says I have to stand here. And I said, oh, interesting. So I carried it in, and I carried in the groceries, and I saw on our blackboard, it was full of algebra, just entirely full of algebra. And I thought, that is interesting. Then I put down the groceries. I went to my husband and said, why is Michelle standing in the front yard? He said, she was refusing to do her school. I was like, tell me more. He said, I was explaining her math to her, and she was being stupid on purpose. And so I brought her in, and he was attempting, it was in her math book, it did say something like 3 plus x equals 5. And that was why he had the board covered with algebra. But the idea was just to give her a hint that if you have 3, how many more must you add to get 5, to make the foundation of algebra, not to teach her all the theorems. So I see many men in homeschooling cannot descend to the level of a child.
Yes. I believe the world of feelings are more important than algebra.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And my idea was you form the moral compass of your child through literature, through capturing their heart for goodness, because they love goodness in the story. They love the character who is noble.
This is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. In our family,
But I'll be sincere to you. I never did anything with the conscious purpose of educating my children. I didn't think about that. I always thought this: they will see me and they will learn with me. They will imitate my example. 24 hours a day. Not only in the times where I'm trying to educate them.
yes,
They'll imitate what I'm doing in times when I'm not trying to educate them.
absolutely.
I do something completely different.
Yes,
So, real life is education.
yes.
Hmm?
So you
What
must
I
spend
do,
time.
they will do.
Yes.
They will copy me. They will imitate me. So, if I want them to be friendly, I'm friendly with them. If I want them to be brave, I'll be brave too. Or they see bravery and learn what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't like to think about children's education. This is only example.
Yeah.
You know, the Brazilian Indians don't teach anything to their children.
They don't.
They don't. And every generation learns everything the other generation knew. There is no Indian education in Brazil. You know, once the man who knew the Indians most in Brazil, his name was Orlando Vilas Boas. He's a famous explorer and how they say, the indigenist. He told once the whole tribe was to fish, and one boy stood in the tribe and he put fire in a cabin, and all the cabins were burned. When they returned, they found it very funny. They gave the boy the name of Captain Smoke, and this was all. And everybody is happy. So they're very calm
That's good.
and very wise, I believe.
That's cool. I have one more question that.
You know my sons, Pedro and Leila.
Yes,
You know they are very good-hearted people.
they are.
Very honest and
Generous,
very
generous.
generous and very intelligent.
Yes.
I didn't teach them to do this.
But I know your son. Anytime I speak to him about what should happen, he always says, my father says, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. And then this is how it is. He is a good example of what you are saying. He
I only
learns
taught
by
them
looking
what they
at
asked
you.
me.
Right.
When they put me a question, I answer the question. That's all.
They have great respect for you.
Great, great.
And they wouldn't if you weren't consistent in your lifestyle.
I'm very happy with my children.
Yeah, yeah, I am too. I'm happy with your children and my children and our grandchildren. I have a question for you. Final question.
Final question, okay.
There was a blog post many months ago on your Facebook where you said there was a list of people that you might like to have a conversation with because you felt maybe you could learn something from those people. One of those people was Jordan Peterson. And I'm wondering what it is about him that made you want to think maybe you can learn something from him.
He is terribly realistic. He sees things as they are. Very simple, huh?
Yeah, everybody can see
You know,
how it is through him.
He's very different from me. He's very different from me. For example, he's a great admirer of Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche. I don't take Jung or Nietzsche very seriously.
Right.
But he gets the best results from Jung and Nietzsche. Yeah, I believe he's a great guy.
Yeah, yeah. When I watch him on YouTube, and the people are trying to throw smoke in his eyes, and he cuts through in such a way that nobody could believe the worldview of the interviewer because it's so obviously false.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. We are doing the book 12 Rules for Life in our English for Philosophy Students book club that we are doing together with the students. And our method is to read together and then I clarify pronunciation and also connotation of words and special usages. And we just read the book, the rules together. I'm not making much comment on the content. What do I know? It's just to help make clear the text for the students. Have you looked at his 12 Rules for Life book?
Not yet. I read the other book.
Maps of Meaning.
Yes, yes. The great book. This is a great, great book.
I think that book is very difficult.
Yes, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But it's natural. It's a book of psychology, a scientific book.
Right, yeah.
But the main thing about Mr. Peterson is he prefers a reality he does not understand than an idea he understands.
That's interesting. I remember once
And this is the most important because reality was made by God,
Right.
and our ideas are created by ourselves.
Right.
Of course, we understand them, but in most cases, they have nothing to do with reality.
Right. I remember speaking to you many, many years ago about which movies were good and which were bad. And you said, and books too, which books are good, which are bad, especially for children. And you said the most evil is the book or the movie that causes the child to question his connection to reality. Because the task of growing up is to become connected to reality, not fantasy, reality.
Yes, in the last 3 centuries, philosophy turned it to the human mind. They only think about the human mind. And they believe everything is in human brain. Did you notice the size of the universe?
Yeah,
Huh? Do you believe everything is in our brain?
it's crazy.
This is absurd, absurd.
It's stupid.
I believe the structures of human thought and of human perception are in the universe. And this imprints on us. Our brain has a very modest job to perform. We only receive all this. For example, the direction of a space. 6 directions of space. This is in the reality around us, and this imprints on our brain. You know, when I was very young, I was very sick, and I stood on the bed so many months with fever that I forgot how we should do to walk. And then I had to learn to walk again. And what is the base of walking? Is the direction of space. Where were they in my brain? No, they were around me. Yeah? So I had to get that structure again and install myself in it. And I had also a collection of turtles. I had 8 turtles. The oldest was called Bijou. And I put them to swim in the tank. And I had a problem with my eyes. I had one of them was myopic, the other was hypermetropy. So one saw the big things and the other the small things. And I keep walking, keeps saying the turtles swimming, and I look at them with my right eye and then my left eye, and they're different. But then I said, well, they are different, but the directions are the same.
Uh-huh.
When they go to the right, I see they go to the right with both eyes.
Yes.
So
Right.
there are many subjective differences,
Yes.
but the structure of space is the same for all of us.
Right.
This is our reality.
Right.
This is the basis of our intelligence. The universe is the base of our intelligence, not our brain.
Huh. And all of these leftists are trying to disconnect us
Of course.
from what makes us have our common intelligence.
Yes, and they're teaching people to become more and more subjective.
Right.
This is so boring. I believe my brain is very boring. But the universe is very interesting.
Right. Very interesting. Well, I think we are out of time, and I want to thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. It was a
Very
pleasure.
enjoyable.
It was a
And
pleasure.
um,
Come
thank you.
again whenever you want.
Yes.
And sorry for my awful English.
You do not have awful English. You have great English
Thank
and
you.
a great mind.
Thank you.